Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is good to be together. You are welcome to keep your video on throughout the service. We'll mostly keep our audio off, but let's all unmute for a few moments to say hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
We got several folks here in the main hall as well. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm seeing the mute signs come off. I'm hearing people's voices. Lovely. Good morning. Okay. We will have them on, our sound on again near the end to say our benediction together. You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. I made a mistake in the order of service. We have 2 for 1 today. This is not Jackowicki's day to share from the Stewardship Committee. We have Lisa Hellmans and Randy Hellmans speaking to us today. So that's who we'll be hearing shortly. There's lots of announcements of upcoming stuff. I'd like to particularly call your attention to Discovering UUCPA. That is this afternoon at 1 o'clock. It's via Zoom. We have 4 different themes that rotate through, and any one is fine to start with. So even if you've gone to Discovering UUCPA today, this will have a lot of new material. In the past, this will have a lot of new material for you. It's specifically on the things that we do, that we offer here to help you move along on your spiritual journey or find your theology. So join me if you can. And now, let us begin our service. If you have a chalice there with you, please light it along with me. We'll hear the words of Laura Wallace. As the hard earth holds the determined seed, this sacred space holds our weariness, our worry, our laughter, and our celebration. Let us bring seed and soul into the light of thought, the warmth of community, and the hope of love. Let us see together, hear together, love together. Let us worship. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from a traditional Jewish prayer, the same one that Barry just played on the violin. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. By your plentiful grace do I enter your house. I worship you in your sanctuary in reverence. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us become centered and fully present in this place together. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing Wake Now, My Senses.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
All right, ready? Yep. Hi, I'm Randy Hellmans. Oh,
Wait.
sorry. I'm Lisa Hellmans.
And I'm Randy Hellmans. We've been members of UUCPA for over 21 years and have enjoyed a range of opportunities for personal growth that the UUCPA has offered us. We originally joined to give our children a safe and supportive environment to learn about the world's religions, develop their spirituality, provide tools to use in navigating life's challenges, and meaningful ways to celebrate life's major milestones.
We chose UUCPA in particular for the great social justice work that they do, which align with our values. Soon after, we found more for our own personal development and have contributed to our community in many ways over the last few decades. I have been able to grow personally and professionally by serving on several committees. Many of these activities push me out of my comfort zone, which really is critical if you want to do some personal growth and continue to grow as we age. I served on the board. This is my second term. I've been on the Committee on Ministry, the Planning Council when there was one, the Nominating Committee. Now I'm also on the Stewardship Committee. And we've also joined we're on the Membership Committee. I've co-chaired the auction, and I have really enjoyed a lot of the numerous fun parties that we have attended over the years from all of our wonderfully creative members. In addition, I've taught RE and the OWL classes, and I also enjoy being a member of some of the small groups, the Chalice circles and women's groups, and so, yeah, there's a lot to be done or experienced here at UUCPA.
Well, my list is a little shorter. I've supported the auction. I've taught RE. I was a mentor for the Coming of Age program. We had a rocketry class or two out here. I supported the Membership and Growth Committee, And of course, a couple years ago, we had our first blood donation Olympics, which is a blood drive with the Red Cross. By the way, the next one is scheduled for October 1st. So we've enjoyed the many friends we've made in this community and continue to support the very important work for the homeless, critical environment concerns, political and social justice issues that are important not only to us, but to the world. Ready? We cannot imagine a better community to belong to and continue to actively support UUCPA in as many ways as is possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Wait, Lisa and Randy. I got that right? Okay. We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives, which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like me to speak this morning, please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or post them in the chat box provided by Zoom, and they will be shared aloud. In our hearts, with prayer or meditation, what we have heard, to know that so many joys and sorrows move through our community and the greater community of all beings, and that our compassion can extend to them all. Let us take a moment to practice that now. Blessed be. I have a story for us all now. Comes to us from Janine Grossmeyer, being retold, of course, not word for word, by me, although you can find it, if you wish to read it again in her words, you can find it online. A lamp in every corner. Many years ago, in the faraway land of Transylvania, what we now know as part of Romania. In a mountain valley watered by beautiful streams, sheltered by great forests of beech trees, there was a village, little wooden houses with dark shingled wooden roofs. The people in this village were Unitarians, but they didn't have a church of their own, and they wanted one. They dreamed of a church set on the hillside so that it could look down upon them in their village the way a parent looks on their sleeping child. So, all of the people of the village gathered their resources and their labor, and they worked long and hard to build themselves a church. They built it with their own hands. The stonemasons hammered the stone into great blocks and built it up into walls. The glaziers made tiny glass panes and fitted them neatly into the windows. The foresters sawed tall beech trees into enormous beams, and they laid the trusses for the ceiling. Maybe it looked something like our main hall ceiling looks like right here. And they covered the roof with close-fitting wooden shingles just like they had on their houses, so not a drop of rain would come through. The carpenters carved beautiful doors and windows and set them into place on strong pegs, so the doors hung straight and square and the windows could let in the beautiful air. And the bell was brought, where it was cast in a faraway city, and every strong person in the village hoisted it up by ropes, heave-ho, up into a tall tower so that when it rang, they could hear the call to worship throughout the village, everywhere in the hills, wherever they might be. There were weavers in the community who wove fine cloths for the altar, and embroiderers and lace knitters who embroidered the cloths with beautiful flowers and edged them with homemade lace. and the smiths hammered black iron into tall lampstands and hammered thin bronze into shining oil lamps because this was a long time ago, and that's how they lit their spaces. And then finally, when the building of the church was done, this will seem very familiar to those of you who've come by and had a look at what's happening at UUCPA right now. The painting of the church began. The painters mixed bright colors, royal red like we have on our main hall doors now, and shimmering blue like we have on the fireside room doors, and gold and silver and other colors. And everyone in the village of whatever age came to decorate their church. And they painted flowers and they painted trees on the walls inside and on the doors and the windows. The beautiful carvings were all bright colors of different designs. It was beautiful. And at the end of the last day of building and furnishing and decorating, when the church was finally done after all their hard labor, the people of the village finished sweeping out, cleaning up, and they stood back to admire it. And then they sang a song of happiness and rejoicing and gratitude. Their village had a church now, a church set on the hillside and looking down upon them the way a parent looks on a sleeping child. "Now we will eat," announced an elder of the village, because they had worked very hard on this last day. They were hungry. So they all headed down into the village after the end of their long day's work to have their dinner. Later tonight, the elder said, "We'll come back and pray for the first time in our new church." So the people of the village went down the hillside to their homes and their suppers, all except one little girl named Zora and her father. They had brought their dinner with them, bread and cheese, and so they just sat on the grass there on the hillside, looking at their beautiful church, looking at the people going down into the village and talking about all that they were going to do in their new space. After they'd eaten, they went back inside and just enjoyed being there, just the two of them looking around. Oh, it was so beautiful. Zora just spun and danced in the space among all the painted, beautiful flowers and trees, and then she thought of something. The sun was starting to go down. People weren't done with their dinners yet. It was going to be dark. She said, "Papa, how are people going to see? It's so dark in here. We have our tall lampstands, but there's no lights on them." "Well," her father said, "don't you worry. The light of the church comes from its people. You'll see what I mean. In fact, it's almost time to ring the bell to bring them back now. Let's go ring the bell." So he pulled on the rope and Zora helped. They pulled long and strong and the bell rang again and again to call the people to worship. And then hand in hand, Zora and he went back outside and waited on the grassy hillside next to their beautiful church of strong gray stone for the people to come back. The sun had set. It was growing dark. And yet in the growing darkness, they could see tiny points of light coming toward them up the hill from the village. "You see, little one," her father explained, "each family is entrusted with a lamp. Each family lights its own way here." "Where's our family's lamp?" Zora asked. "Mama has it. You'll see. She'll be here soon with everybody else." The many lights moved closer together and got bigger and stronger, gathering in one moving stream as they came up the hill toward the church where Zora and her father were waiting. Her mother was there, holding their burning oil lamp in her hands. And the father lifted Zora so she could set their family's lamp up on a high, tall iron stand, and all around the church, other families were doing the same. And soon the church was ablaze with a lamp in every corner. For everybody in the village had come to pray and sing for the first time in their new church. Zora watched the flames flicker all through the service, especially her family's lamp. And when the service was over, her father lifted her up high, and she took down the warm lamp, still lit, and her mother carried it home with the flame lighting the way. It continued to light the house as Zora washed her face and got ready for bed. And as she climbed into bed, she said, "Mother." "Yes, little one." "Father said the light of the church comes from its people." "Yes. But also the people take their light from the church. Here it is. We have it all day long." There it was, burning on the table. It was the light that was going to guide them whenever it was dark in the house. "Yes, indeed," said her mother. "And even when we are not in church, even when the lamp is not lit, we carry the light of truth and the flame of love in our hearts to show us the right way to be, to tell us how to act, what to say. That light, the light from truth and love, it will never go out." "Really, Mama? Never?" said Zora. "Never." And her mother told her, "This bronze lamp will last for many, many, many years. When you are grown, we will give the bronze lamp to you. And if you have children, when they're grown, you will give the lamp to them. And all of you will carry it back and forth to church every time." This did not make sense to Zora. She said, "There's only one lamp, Mama." "So you'll make another one," her mother said. "And you'll let the light grow. And someday, tell those children that you've given your lamps to make more lamps also. And now good night," her mother said, and she kissed her good night. Zora lay down to sleep, and her mother watched her. She watched her sleeping child. Well, the years passed. Zora grew. The bronze lamp came into her care just as her mama had promised. She kept it polished and clean, and whenever the bell rang out across the valley to call the people to the church, she carried the lamp back and forth, the flame always lighting her way. And when the time came, she did have children, and she made more lamps and gave them to them. And they made more lamps and gave them to their children. And so it went on through the years, even until today. And always the light of truth and the flame of love from that Unitarian church on the hillside continued to grow and show them and show us the way. Let us now sing together as Bruce leads us in "Come Sing a Song with Me."
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might blow your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me.
Today's service is the first of 3 through this winter and spring that focus on our church's history and future in this year of its 75th anniversary. So it was appropriate for us to have the chair of the 75th anniversary committee, Brian Weller, to share our reading today.
Fortunately, I'm co-chair, thanks to Judy Lookabill for joining us and doing all the work. Prayer for this house. May nothing evil cross this door. May ill fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and the rains go by. Strengthened by faith, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This hearth, though all the world grow chill, will keep you warm. Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching your lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. Laughter shall drown out the raucous shout, and though the sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong enough to keep hate out and hold love in.
Our anthem this morning is like a second reading. The text this time is our own buildings and grounds. What do you notice as you see them in these pictures? I was so grateful and inspired that Barry, when he saw the topic of this service, chose Ma Tovu as his opening music. I want to tell you a little bit about how that prayer came about. The first line of it is from the Bible. How goodly are thy tents, O Yaakov, Jacob. How beautiful thy encampments, O Israel, Yisrael. Now those are, he's not speaking to a particular person, he's speaking to the people Israel, who in turn took their name from Yaakov, Jacob, the third of the three patriarchs, and the reason he got that name is an interesting one for Unitarian Universalists. Someday I'll tell you the whole story in much more detail, but to be very brief, Jacob was sleeping by a river one night, and a mysterious man started wrestling with him. Wrestled all night. They wrestled to a stalemate until the morning light, when the man said, I need to leave you now, but I'm giving you a new name. You will be called Israel. Yisrael, which means the one who wrestles with God. Because you have wrestled with God and with humanity and with yourself and prevailed. And so that became the name of Jacob's descendants, his people, the ones who wrestle with God. And I've always thought that Yaakov, Israel, is an apt patron saint for Unitarian Universalists. Those who wrestle with received truths, with our own first thoughts, with whatever has been told to us is sacred, because we believe and we experience in that wrestling that that process itself is holy. So this phrase from the Bible was spoken when a man was sent, a man named Balaam, was sent by his leader to curse the people of Yaakov, the people of Israel. And like the church up on the hill in the story, he saw them from above, and he was about to curse them when something came over him, something he couldn't explain. And instead he called out this blessing. How beautiful are your tents. How beautiful are your dwelling places, O people of Israel. And so he blessed them instead. And Jewish people took that line, and its line, your people, your tents. And they expanded the you and added lines that seemed to be addressed to God. How you have blessed me with your grace. I enter into your sanctuary. In the version I read, the first you, when he's talking to Jacob and the people of Israel, it has a small y for you, and then when it changes, it talks to big Y, you. But there's no such thing in Hebrew. There's no use of capital letters. It's exactly the same pronoun, so we can judge for ourselves who is being addressed. Who creates the grace of this sanctuary? Who creates the beauty of those tents? What makes space sacred? That's what I'm thinking about today as I reflect on our history, thinking about our physical heritage here at UUCPA. There are so many ways to enter sacred space. So many theologies, so many paths that other people might call secular, that we list among our sources. Reason and science and prophetic actions, nature, the arts. So many ways in addition to all the many theologies of humanity. And those paths are sacred. Those paths by which we light the way to our sacred space are themselves sacred, whatever they may be. It is what we do and think and experience and feel and sing and say here, together, or alone in the great open space of our sanctuary, that hallows it, that hallows not only the sanctuary and the beautiful gardens, but the patio, the lawn, even, and as recently as this morning, the parking lot. And then we create and tend the space to show that it is so, to show that we are important, we are sacred. We bring one another the grace by which we are transformed. Something happens. Moments of wisdom, of insight, of compassion, of an opening of our hearts to something that we had not even realized was there before. We created this space and we care for it to show that what happens here is important. Pardon me just a moment. Let's reflect on other places. They could be here in this space or any place else in your life that seems sacred to you, just because of your experience. Maybe it's your childhood home with a door jamb marked, little lines and dates showing your and your siblings' growth over the years. Maybe it's a place that you camped out and saw the sunrise. Maybe it's a museum or a theater or a classroom or a hospital room. Let's just spend a little time there and think about what makes it sacred, what makes it matter, especially to each of us. Now, these places where something sacred happens, something that sends us forth with new understanding or fuller life, they can be anywhere. Of course they can. They can be anywhere. And what humans do when something important happens, no matter where it may be, is oftentimes we create a shrine. Right back to ancient cairns, just a little pile of stones that say, there's something important happened here. After Jacob had his mysterious encounter with a stranger who wrestled with him all night, he put a stone there so that he would always know it was that spot, and anybody who came along could see something happened here to someone. We see it when we go by a spot on the highway where someone died, that an impromptu shrine is created there. Because sometimes the sacred places are terrible, but something enormous, transformative happened there. And although it may just look like any spot on the highway to everybody else, those who know, those whose lives were changed in that spot, they'll mark it with flowers, with teddy bears, with a cross or a name. And oftentimes, the shrines that we create to the sacred places in our lives are just in our hearts. No one else can see them. I had an experience in a conference room, a center in one of those conference centers, hotels. All the rooms are the same, ugly carpeting and fluorescent lights, and I can't even remember what city it was in. I could go and look it up, I suppose. What city was our General Assembly in that year? All I know is in that unimportant room, I heard an address, a sermon really, that changed my life. I think of it often. It changed me for the better. And so in my heart, I have a little shrine there. I couldn't set it up. They'd shoo me away. So many ordinary things happen in that room, different ones every week. But there's a shrine there for me. Any place where, as Lisa said, we're pulled out of our comfort zone and we are transformed, or we transform others. The world is transformed through us. They may have a shrine, physical, invisible, tangible, intangible. So how do we tend those places to say what Louis Untermeyer said with his beautiful prayer to bless a home? To say that every casual corner is a shrine, a reminder that what happens here is what matters most. We might do all sorts of things. We might set up a physical shrine. We might just clear a little space, keep it clean, keep it polished like Zora's brass lamp. Might put a photograph there. Or you might just remember it. Pause in thinking every time we go by that place. We give it care. So I'm thinking about the care that we give our place here. This has been a welcoming place for people who don't find a welcome in most religious communities. Ever since its founding, a welcoming place for, as well as people of other theologies, humanists, atheists, doubters, questioners. The founders of our congregation and those who built these buildings 10 years later, who planted these gardens and set out these grounds, they asserted what happens in the heart and soul of an atheist is as important as what happens in the religious awakenings of a theist, of a Christian. This is our church, honoring our many paths, the many lights that we bring together and make our hearth of right here. They were explicitly recognizing all of these paths as sacred. If you missed Dan's class about this a couple weeks ago, I urge you to follow the link in the order of service. I've put it there in the announcements. And request to watch it, to listen to what he said, because it's fascinating. It's mostly on the buildings, his talk about our buildings and grounds. And he looked at what the people of our church said when they started, when they thought about building these buildings. He started off by thinking small, he said. 2 modest buildings they were thinking of. But they looked ahead and saw that they needed more space than that. And so they dreamed up and talked to an architect who helped them dream up the spaces we have now. They explicitly wanted a building that would reflect, these are their words, reflect freedom of thought and action coupled with the disciplines of a mature mind, that would convey a tolerance for the religious beliefs of others and recognition and retention of the good in cultures other than our own. And they said they wanted this space to express a sense of human equality and, their word, brotherhood. And so, and Dan goes into much more detail, insightful detail about the design. I'll just touch on a couple of things that he noted. They created, for one thing, a main hall that had no particular orientation. There was nothing to indicate this is the direction in which we must all face. There was no one center of one's focus. But it wasn't long until the people put the madrone branch that's above my head on one wall, as if, as Dan points out, they were a little uneasy with having so little direction, having a blank wall for us each to write our truths upon. And they made many doors coming into the main hall. There's not one path in, not like many religious communities that direct you to one door, that show you, here's the cross up front, that's where you look, although now the Madrone branch fills much of that role with interesting effect, as thank you for that visual, as Dan said. But also the many doors, they show, people come by many paths. They're all fine. All the paths by which they seek the truth and the light of love. And we feel in our very bodies, in our experiences here, the tension of that. People get lost coming to our main hall. It's hard to direct them to the correct door, and they might try one after another. The doors that are now bright red to say, here you are, here's the place, welcome, come on in. So, in various ways, our founders and the people who built these buildings said, it's all sacred, all the ways you come in. Come on in, they're all welcome, they're all holy. This place is holy. And so I'm wondering whether we believe it. Or do we think that maybe what happens here isn't that important? Because, living in this culture can really do a job on you. Even if you grew up Unitarian Universalist, I imagine you have this challenge. And I know I do, as somebody who didn't. That even though I believe firmly that this is a real religion, that sacred things happen here, things that transform me, that change my life, that make me a better person and help me live out my purpose and help us all to live out a better purpose. Help us to feel that light within that tells us how to be, what to do. There's so much telling us that if we don't have one path, one direction, one door in, we're not a real religion. And what happens here isn't sacred. And so it's important to reflect on what happens here. Right here, where I'm standing right now, we dedicate our children. We welcome them to the world and to our families, and we give them their names and a blessing. Right here, we say goodbye forever to the people we have loved. Sacred events. We dance in these spaces. We eat together. We share conversations that we can't have with anybody else. Talking about the things that we need to talk about, or just listening with an open heart, or looking into somebody else's eyes and knowing they understand. They understand what we can't even give words. People who are hungry, who are homeless, who are outcast, come here and find a warm welcome, food and shelter, and the assurance that we all belong together no matter what our physical circumstances. It's sacred. That's what I see when I look at those pictures. The things that happen, the maypole dance, the walking of the labyrinth, the gathering and speaking and eating waffles. That sacred things happen here. It's not an ordinary space because we have hallowed it. Even the parking lot now will never be the same. We have made it sacred by the things that happen and by the moments of grace and transformation that have happened here. So are we tending it like it matters? Are we polishing it and caring for it. Because, and I'm talking to myself here, I'm not saying anything to you that I haven't said to myself. Something else I see in those pictures is, oh, the paint is peeling there. The rafters are scratched and rotting. We've replaced them in the last year. We've been caring for them. I see so many ways that we don't treat our space, we don't treat ourselves and the amazing things that happen to us in this place as if they really matter. As I said, I have a long list of things, starting with, gosh, scrape the old tape off the inside of my office windows. A long list of things to do to make this space reflect how important it is, and important as the things that happen here are. And they get crowded out. I take it for granted as other priorities crowded out. But then I see the signs that we do care, like the painting that's going on now. It's not just about painting either. That takes money. But creating a shrine does not take money. Just attention and intention. Clearing away of a little space. The noticing that something is dusty and giving it a polish. Looking at every casual corner where we gather. From this main hall, our worship space, to the toddler room strewn with toys. Looking at every casual corner and saying, you know, it's important what happens here, and I'm going to honor it. I'm going to make it beautiful. I love to see that we're doing that. Because it's not just about the space. It's about the people who inhabit it and the longings of our souls. The longings that made people establish a congregation here and build it a home. The longings to take our one wild and precious life and make it reflect how holy, unique, invaluable, beautiful it is. So may we make not only every casual corner of this our shared, beautiful building, gardens, grounds. May we not only make it one great shrine, but may we take that with us wherever we go. With gratitude for all that we create here, we practice a ritual each week of giving our offering, a small symbolic way that we support this religious community, one another, and say, it matters. What happens here matters to me so much. So if you are moved by that sense of gratitude and connection, that hope and experience of transformation, I invite you now to give the offering and receive it. The order of the service gives a QR code and link, and also information on giving via Give Lively via text. Thank you. Now, please join in as Bruce leads us in singing, Break Not the Circle.
all the living. Come wonder at this love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong and guilt, but will that human bonds remain unbroken. Join then the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves, stand on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation.
We extinguish our chalice now with the reminder, in the words of the poem that Brian read. This hearth, though all the world grow chill, will keep you warm. Please stay after our benediction, if you can, for virtual coffee time. You'll be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or if you stay here in the main room, just decline all those invitations. You'll be with me and we'll discuss the service. Now please unmute yourself and turn on your video if you care to. And you can touch hands virtually by putting your hands up against the edges of your box, or put a hand on your heart and another out to others while we say our benediction together. Go out into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Speak love with word and deed. Honor all beings. Amen.